Okay, welcome back to Fast Jet Performance there. My name is Tim Davies, and as you can see, we're back in the attack shack, dropping truth bombs on Jay's personal battlefield, helping him to win the wars he is fighting. Right, so I've been written in then, we're going to call the guy Jay, and he's looking to join the Navy. However, he's got a bit of an issue where he's done really well at the aptitude test, and they've offered him an Admiralty interview board slot, so interviews, i.e., for observer, but not for the pilot role he was going after. We're going to read the email. I used to do quite a few of these. I don't do many anymore, really. People don't write to me that often, and also I've kind of said everything that needs to be said. But I'm going to give some advice here, as if Jay has just walked into my office. I was a flight commander on this airplane here, so as if he's walked in and said, "Hey Tim, what should I do?" Now, one thing I want to remind Jay of, really, at this stage, is that he is a young guy. He's a guy, he says he's a guy, and also he hasn't put his pronouns down, so I'm assuming, aren't I, whatever. He's a dude, okay, he's a dude. And he basically, Jay, of course, is young, so he doesn't have that kind of breadth world knowledge. So he's done something very worthwhile. He's reached out to someone who might be a little bit more worldly wise, having been in the business for the last 20 years, and just saying, look, any kind of advice. Having read his email, yeah, there's two sides here we can look at it from, all right? The other thing I want to just really point out, and especially with the videos I'm doing more recently, is that there is a complete lack, I think, of support for men out there in the world. And I'm not just talking about like men's clubs, men groups, everything else. I'm saying in general, of like a brother hooking a brother up. Does that make sense? Like just doing stuff for a dude because he's a dude, not because he's going to owe you something or you're going to want something from him in the future. So James owes me nothing. I owe James nothing, but I'm older than James. I'm almost 50. James, he's probably about 18 years old. Yeah, there we go. He's 18 years old. So I'm offering something back to him. There's no money. I'm just saying, James, if I can help you, mate, I will. I can't answer everything, of course, because I've still got to earn money, put food on the table for the family. But we need to be helping people out. We can't allow what seems to be a very restrictive, progressive agenda to actually break us all apart. And it's very divisive, as we know it is. We know it is, right? Tea. Enough tea, fam. Hi Tim, I hope this email finds you in good health. I've recently begun watching a lot of your YouTube content, and I found myself stumbling across many videos of you responding to emails about young people's applications to join the forces, although many of these videos are from years ago. Kind of different military years ago, and we'll go into why that is in a minute. I don't know if you plan to make more of these videos, but any advice regarding my application would be greatly appreciated. However, of course, I understand you're a busy man. I was a member of the RAF Air Cadets from 12 to 16, only leaving due to COVID shutting things down. I do believe I've already achieved most of what I could in the organisation in my time, and it's what's inspired me to pursue this line of a career. I applied for the role of pilot in the Navy. Having researched all three services, I believe their ethos and way of life appealed to me the most, and my experience of flying within the Air Cadets had led me being desperate for a career within military aviation. Okay. Recently, after my months of the usual medical delays, I applied at age 18 in summer 2022, having finished sixth form. I sat my FATs, which are the same as the CBATs, so computer-based aptitude testing, for the role of pilot. I scored fairly highly for pilot. I scored fairly highly for pilot, 156 with a cut-off score being 128. However, I failed the cut-off for one section, resulting in a fail. The section I didn't reach the cut-off for was a result of a small error in understanding on my part for one of the tasks. However, it was a mistake I realised I had made and would not repeat were I to repeat the tests again, likely resulting in a future path considering I achieved a high overall score. That is a high score, 158 actually. I've seen a lot lower than that. This has left me in a slight predicament. I've been offered a place at the Admiralty interview board with a view of pursuing the observer role. This role would provide me all the experience as an officer in the aviation branch of the Royal Navy that I'm looking for. However, I can't help but feel as though I would be giving up on a dream too early, as I'm fairly confident I was past the aptitude test second time around for pilot. I understand passing ALB is of course another major hurdle itself, which is true actually. I was just wondering if you had any advice on the situation. I understand you're a fast jet mate, not rotary. However, I assume you know people in the business. My question is, do you recommend following through with the observer role, or does the role of pilot offer an advantage above other roles that make it worth holding out for? Are you waiting for another slot at aptitude testing as well as contending with holding pools, etc, etc? What a really nice email from a really nice young man. Presented well, perfect spelling all over the place, just absolutely nicely grammatically put. I would just say that, guys. Remember that Clarkson Farm thing, Clarkson Farms 2, where that lawyer was against Clarkson about the farmer solicitor. Clarkson said, which is quite funny actually. You know, need to sort his spelling out. Well, that same solicitor wrote a thing back to Clarkson saying, well, I'm actually dyslexic, and that kind of goes into the victimhood narrative that we were talking about in the last email, wasn't it? Because of course my argument would be, well mate, use a spell checker then. If you're a lawyer and you're writing something professionally, in fact the lawyer actually does talk about A.A. Gill, who was also dyslexic and said he was a hero of his. A.A. Gill actually used his secretary, phoned up his secretary, I don't think it was secretary, he phoned her up and actually spoke on the phone, and that's how A.A. Gill did the writing. He got someone else to write it for him, okay? So he had a workaround. This lawyer doesn't seem to have a workaround. That's what I'm talking about, the victim narrative. Look, if a 16-year-old guy, young man here, can write to me in a perfect email like this, there is no excuse for getting your spelling wrong nowadays, like that solicitor did on Clarkson's farm, okay? So let's be realistic, guys. When I talk about victimhood, I'm talking about people that make themselves the victim, not that people actually are victims from earthquakes, war, everything else. Of course, those people will look after. People that want to play that victimhood narrative, those are the people I'm upset about, all right? And I don't want to see people getting into that, especially people in my school or people that are in my system that I take them through. My advice to this young man then, it's a difficult one, to be fair. I know the observer role is held in a very high regard. Of course it is. It's a very specialist role. That won't give you access, though, to fast jets and the fast jet community, which is, of course, F-35 in the Navy. And this is what you've got to think about as a young guy. I would argue that you are limiting your potential by not going back and redoing the aptitude test. You said you have a dream there. And the thing about dreams, you know, okay, it's a dream, fair enough. But we can still go for it, right? We can still head that way. We can still climb that mountain as far as we can go. And what I've always said to people is, don't limit yourself. Let someone else limit you. So you keep going. You keep going. The only reason I flew fast jets, by the way, is because I knocked on someone's door and said, any chance I can go jets? And the guy went, oh yeah, no one else has asked. It was literally that. I've said it before. No one else has asked. He was a Commodore in the Navy. He said, are you sure? Because no one else wants to do it. Yeah, I think so. If any chance I can go jets. I was in the Navy at the time in naval training. And he said, yeah, I'll put you on jets then. Scores are good enough. Off you go. No one else asked. There've been other guys on my course that would have been good enough for jets. They just never asked to go. So you might be limiting yourself a little bit if you don't go back and do those aptitude tests again. What I would do, the guy can obviously write an email. He's obviously very good. He's obviously a very eloquent young man. I would put together an email, and I'm sorry, I've got the emails open, which is why it's going bing. And I would write an email back to AIB saying, look, I know I made a mistake. I know which test it was. I know exactly where I made a mistake. And unfortunately, I can't do anything about that now, but I would like to go and sit them again. And I'm also exceptionally grateful of the opportunity that you have given me at the moment to come to the AIB, to come and just interview for the Navy is a blessing. A lot of guys that write to me, a lot of people, a lot of women, don't get the opportunity. They don't get the opportunity to go to OASC, Officer Aircrew Selection Centre, or Admiralty Interview Board, or of course for the Army. They don't get invited. You've been invited to go and you've been offered a place to come and interview at AIB for the role of observer. Now, the same thing happened to me, by the way. I was in AIB on my first one I did back in 97, I think it was, and I'd been revising for my degree at the time and prioritised the degree. Luckily, I got my degree, and I failed my AIB with a really, really low score. But they offered me, well, it wasn't super low, but it was low for the role I was going for. And they said, would you accept engineer? I had an engineering degree, and I said, I'm really, really sorry, but no, I won't accept engineer. I really want to fly airplanes. I believe in the piloting role. This is one that I really want to go into. And I rejected the offer. And it's hard to reject something that's been given to you. And you know how that is. I mean, it's not easy, right? But I rejected it. I went away, worked really, really hard, went back 6 months later for the AIB. It should have been a year, but I wrote a letter like this young man's going to write. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm really, really grateful. And they invited me back after 6 months, and I then passed with a really high score and was accepted for pilot. So all I would say is maybe have a deep think about this. You haven't passed AIB yet, so it's not like someone's offered you a job that you're turning down, standby T. It's not like you're rejecting a job offer from someone. You're just rejecting an interview for a job, okay? It doesn't mean you're going to get the job. So what I would do is I'd write a nice letter, say, thank you very much. I'd like to go back to the FATs or the CBATs, and I'd like to do them again, please, because I believe I can improve my score, and therefore I can present much better, of more value to you as a future pilot in the Navy, hopefully on F-35, but of course on one of the rotary platforms, if that's possible. I might put something in there as well because I see a future career in the Navy that I want to, drive ships or the carrier, and I believe that maybe being a pilot, might be better for that. But of course, you might end up writing, and the guy reading it's an observer, and then you've kind of pissed everyone off. So you're not trying to shut any doors here, okay? You still want to be offered the observer role next time if possible, but you'd ideally like to be offered both together. So my advice to this young guy is don't shut these doors early. I would suggest he's a young dude. He's only 18. I believe the cutoff for the Navy is something, well, I think the Air Force is 23 and a half. Maybe, so it's going to be something similar. It's a bit older than that, 26, I believe it is for the Navy. So you've got time on your side. I would try and go back for those tests again. Now, second point, is it faster to go through observer training than pilot training? Well, it probably is, especially if you're going for fast jet. As we know right now, I'm not hitting the Air Force or UKM FTS or anything else, but of course the pipeline for fast jet right now is a bit clogged up. Everyone used to say to me, but it'll be fine when you get through because it's 5 years in the future. That never happened. I think it's always going to be in trouble. So yeah, you may have a really long time staggering yourself through fast jet flying training, but you won't be the first. You'll be one of many, many that are treading that treadmill. Rotary training will be a bit quicker for you, and observer training is even faster than that. And the second part of this, then, I'd just like to talk about an email I've got from a good friend of mine, someone that's come through the spin recovery training course that I did a while back, called Mark, and he's written to me and he said that he's watched my Coming to Save You video. I was criticised on that video, by the way, for like looking up here and thinking about things. And if you're going to do some deep thinking, guys, try not to stare into a camera when you do it, you know what I mean? But you're going to get criticised in life for whatever you do. And if that's going to stop you doing stuff, then, well, you know, that's the thing, isn't it? You're never going to do anything of any kind of value, are you? He said, interestingly, he said, and this goes back to that first email a little bit as well. He said, I know the general health of men is a recurring topic and something we've talked about before, but I watched a documentary the other day about an actress that suffered from getting dick pics. Can I say that word on YouTube? I don't know. But, you know, I don't know why men do that, by the way. I don't know where the mentality is of sending a picture. Now, he says, Mark said, now he's kind of bothered by this. He says that he thinks men have descended to such a level, and he wondered how we'd got here. And he's got a bit of a theory on it. And Mark is about his theory. He's a good dude like this. He says that men are no longer sort of allowed to normalise other men. The whole apparatus that used to be men's thinking standards that kept them in check has been dismantled. Before they came for women with the whole trans movement and everything else, they actually went for men first. They talked about toxic masculinity. It's still knocking about, isn't it? People still talk about toxic men. It's the same thing with the feminist argument. I don't want to get into this whole kind of thing right now, but the fourth wave feminism, whatever feminism you might be into, if you are into feminism, and I'm most definitely not a feminist for many, many reasons. I think it's very, very, well, puts women into that victim mentality, of course, isn't it, for the most part. But I would just say that whenever feminism pushes for these roles for women, they're always the roles of CEO, politician, or, you know, whatever it might be. They're never roles of bricklayer, are they, or road maintenance person. They don't want those roles. They just want the high-powered roles. So they came for men first, and they talk about toxic masculinity and how men needed to shut up, whatever. And of course, men went, all right, fair enough, I'll go and build my shed then, or I'll go and run my flight school, or I'll go and do whatever I'm doing. And that's what men did, because men don't want the drama. Men like the silence. Men really like the silence. What Mark says here, the pub, football, men's clubs have either been shut down or had the men aspect only turned into being toxic. Golf clubs is a classic one, isn't it? Women came into golf clubs. There aren't any kind of men's spaces anymore. The conversations that used to take place there normalised men. If they got out of line, they were by either talking or they were solved by either just talking or listening to the conversation. And they altered and they came back to a group standard. And I believe that. And I believe what we're missing right now is that kind of group dynamic. In my school, I've just started a thing right now where if you crash the airplane during a lesson or formalised flying event, you've got to write an incident report. You've got to tell people why you crashed your airplane. What happened? Was it your fault? And if it is your fault, then what we do is we rename you for a month. If you crash your airplane into the ground, and because you did something stupid, then we rename you a tent peg or something like that. So for the month, you'll be tent peg or something. It's a bit of banter. It's not toxic. It's just the way I think things should be. And it seems to be now that doesn't help. Now, Mark does say, and then along came feminism, and it removed this mechanism, leaving men disconnected from each other and unable to access a group, and therefore normalised understanding of what was right or wrong. Now, you're right, and I'm not having to go at feminism, anything else. Well, I probably am. We all probably should, to be fair, because I think it is quite damaging. But that's not what the video is about. I'm talking about men helping out men and trying to maintain your standards. He does say that my school is somewhere where they don't have to worry about that. They can be men together, they can fly together, and they can fly with each other, they can talk quite openly about what's going on in their lives. That's how I keep the school like that. I'm not going to talk about Mark's email anymore, but I really respect the guy, and it's great that he managed to write to me. And one thing I am saying, and if I can leave the video we leave with anything on this video at all, one thing I will say is, if there's a way that you can help out another man next year, then please do so. Just reach out a little bit, you know, just check he's all right. What's going on? I know we talk about this, don't we? It's okay not to be okay. And I'm not talking about those people being victims at all. They're not whatsoever. A lot of people are going through a lot of mental stress right now, and we know why. We know it's intentional by the government, don't we? They just want to fragment us and everything else, and I fully appreciate that. What I'm saying is, let people speak, let men speak to you about stuff and speak to men about stuff and uphold their standards. No one told me when I was putting on weight, but no one said to me, you're putting on weight, mate. No one said that, not once. Isn't it weird? We should say, hey, how's it going? Using the gym recently? Oh, I haven't had time to go to the gym. Yeah, it shows, mate. Come on. It shows you haven't had time to go to the gym. I know we can't all do it, hold my hand up and say, yeah, I didn't do much since I came out of the military, really, but I'm doing stuff now. But let's just push it back to men. Come on. I might need you one day. I might need you one day standing next to me on the line holding a big spear. You know, we've got to uphold our own personal standards, and we have to make sure that around us, people uphold theirs. Hey, Tim Davies, Classic Performance.